I always admired my parents' marriage, until I found old letters in the attic addressed to my mom from a man who wasn't my dad. And the chilling part was that the dates on those letters lined exactly with the time my brother was born, making me wonder if he had been living his whole believing a lie. I always admired my parents' marriage until I found old letters in the attic addressed to my mom from a man who wasn't my dad. The chilling part was that dates on those letters lined exactly with the time my brother was born, making me wonder if he had been living his whole believing a lie. But here's the thing that makes me sick to my stomach as I write this. Finding those letters didn't teach me the lesson it should have. Instead, it somehow gave me permission to do something even worse. My name is Michael and I'm 34 years old. 3 months ago, I was married to the most incredible woman on earth with 2 beautiful kids who called me daddy. Today, I'm writing this from a studio apartment that smells like microwave dinners and regret, trying to explain how discovering my mother's affair led me to destroy everything I'd ever loved. The letters were love letters. Passionate, desperate, raw letters that made my skin crawl because I recognized the handwriting. It belonged to my Uncle Dave, my dad's younger brother who had always been part of the family. The man who came to every birthday party, every Christmas, every family barbecue. The man who looked exactly like my brother Jake. I found them while cleaning the attic after Mom's funeral last year. Dad had asked me to go through her things, said he couldn't bear to do it himself. There they were, tied with a blue ribbon, a shoebox labeled Christmas decorations. 23 letters spanning from March 1989 to January 1990. Jake was born in December 1989. The first letter I opened made me throw right there in the dusty attic. My dearest Sarah, I can't stop thinking about last night. When told me might be pregnant, my heart stopped. If this baby is mine, I don't know how we'll handle this, but I want to know that I love more than itself. I read every single letter that day, even though each one felt like swallowing glass. Uncle Dave begging my mother to leave my father. My mother writing back. I found copies of her responses saying she couldn't break the family, but their love was real. Uncle Dave talking about how he wanted to raise their child together. The timeline was perfect, too perfect. Jake had always looked different from the rest of us. Dark hair when we were all blonde, green eyes when ours were brown. Dad's nose, we always said, but now I could see it was Dave's nose. Dave's everything. I sat in that attic for 6 hours reading about how my mother had carried on a passionate affair with my uncle for almost 2 years. How they would meet at motels. How she would tell my father she was visiting her sister in Portland, when really she was spending weekends with his brother. How they planned to run away together before she found out she was pregnant, and couldn't figure out who the father was. The worst part was Lord dated January 15, 1990, 3 weeks after Jake was born. Sarah, I can't keep pretending anymore. When I hold that baby and see my own eyes looking back at me, it tears me apart. But made choice. I'll spend the rest of my watching my son call another man daddy, and I'll spend years knowing the truth. Some secrets are too big to keep forever. That night I went home to my wife Emma and my kids, Lily 8 and Sam 5, and I couldn't look at them. All I could think about was lies and secrets and how easy it apparently was to fool everyone around for decades. Emma kept asking what was wrong, and I just said I was tired from cleaning the attic. But that was already working its way through my system. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about those letters. About how my mother had lived this double. About how Uncle Dave still came to family dinners and looked at Jake with this sad, knowing expression I'd never noticed before. About how my father had no idea that one of his 3 sons wasn't actually his. Emma noticed I was distant. She'd try to curl next to me in bed and I'd make excuses. She'd ask about my day and I'd give one-word answers. She started staying later trying to get me to talk. But been different since Mom died, she'd say. I know we're grieving, but can talk to me about anything. Anything except the fact that I was starting to understand how someone could live a lie for so long. How someone could look at the person they supposedly loved and think about someone else. How easy it might be to justify crossing lines never thought to cross. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. I started noticing other women again for the first time in 10 years of marriage. I started thinking about what it would feel like to touch someone new. To feel wanted by someone who didn't know all my flaws and failures. Someone who hadn't seen me get food from gas station sushi or cry during Toy Story 3. 3 months after finding the letters, I was at a work conference in Chicago. Emma had me goodbye that morning and told me she loved me. Lily had made me a drawing to take with me. Sam had asked me to bring him back a present. I promised them all I would. That night at the hotel bar I met Rebecca. She was a consultant from Denver, divorced, no kids. Beautiful in a way that Emma wasn't, sharp where Emma was soft, confident where Emma was nurturing. We started talking about work, then about things I hadn't talked to anyone about in years. She laughed at my jokes. She looked at me like I was interesting instead of just dependable. When she put her hand on my arm while we were talking, I didn't pull away. "We're married," she said, noticing my ring. "Yeah," I said, and for the first time in my I added, "But it's complicated." It wasn't complicated. It was simple. Emma loved me. Our kids adored me. We had a happy marriage, plans for the future. But sitting there with Rebecca, I felt something I hadn't felt since before kids and mortgages and the daily grind of being responsible for other people's happiness. I felt like again. Or maybe like someone I could have been if I'd made different choices. "My room is on the 7th floor, Rebecca said as we finished our 3rd drink. "Room 712. I should have called Emma and told her I missed her. I should have looked at the picture of my kids in my wallet and remembered what really mattered. Instead, I found standing out 712 at 11:04 p.m., my wedding ring burning like acid on my finger. When she opened the door, she was wearing a hotel bathrobe and nothing else. "I was hoping, come," she said and pulled me inside. That was the moment. The moment I chose to become my mother. The moment I decided that my temporary discomfort was worth more than my family's permanent trust. The moment I away everything good in my because I was too weak to deal with the disillusionment of discovering that even the best marriages can hide terrible secrets. I stayed in Rebecca's room until 4 a.m. We talked, we laughed, we did things I hadn't done since college. She made me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. When I finally left to go back to my own room, I felt like I'd crossed into a different world. one where I was the protagonist of my own story instead of just a supporting character in everyone else's. The guilt hit me the second I walked into my hotel room and saw Emma's picture on the nightstand. But it was too late. The line was crossed. The secret had begun. I flew home the next day with Rebecca's number in my phone and a story about how boring the conference had been. Emma picked me at the airport with both kids in the car. They'd made welcome home signs and everything. "How was Chicago, Daddy?" Lily asked as I buckled her into her car seat. "It was fine, sweetheart," I said, avoiding Emma's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Just boring works us." Sam wanted to know. Of course I did. I lied, and realized how easy it was going to be to keep lying. That night, as Emma fell asleep curled against my chest like she had for 10 years, I stared at the ceiling and thought about Rebecca's skin and Rebecca's laugh and Rebecca's promise that she'd be in Chicago again next month. I told it was just one night. One mistake that I'd never repeat. But deep down I knew I was kidding. I'd already started planning when I could see her again. The secret felt like a living thing growing inside me, feeding on every kiss Emma gave me, every time the kids hugged me, every moment of normal family that I was now experiencing as an outsider looking in. 3 weeks later Rebecca texted me. "I can't stop thinking about Chicago. When can I see again?" I stared at that text for an hour before responding. I should have deleted it. I should have blocked her number. I should have told Emma everything and begged for forgiveness. Instead I wrote back, "I'll figure something out." And that's when I knew I wasn't just someone who had made a mistake. I was someone who was going to keep making it. The lying became as natural as breathing. Within a month of Chicago I had constructed an entire alternate reality where business trips ran long, work emergencies required weekend attention, and client dinners kept me out until midnight. Emma never questioned any of it because she trusted me completely, and that trust felt like a twisting in my chest every single day. Rebecca and I started meeting once a month. Sometimes in Chicago, sometimes in cities halfway between our homes. I became an expert at booking flights, finding hotels, and creating believable excuses. I had a separate credit card that Emma didn't know about, a separate email address, a separate phone that I kept hidden in my car. The worst part wasn't the logistics of the affair. It was how good I became at compartmentalizing. When I was with Rebecca, Emma and the kids felt like characters from a movie I'd once watched. When I was home, Rebecca felt like a dream I'd had. I could switch between these two versions of so seamlessly that I started to forget which one was real. "Seem happy lately," Emma said one morning over coffee while the kids ate breakfast. "Different, like her finally processing moms in a healthy way." I almost choked on my coffee. "Yeah, I think I'm learning to appreciate what I have." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I love Michael. I know this year has been hard with losing Mom and everything with work, but we're solid, no. And me, this family. We can get through anything." That afternoon, I booked a hotel room in Portland for the following weekend. I told Emma I needed to visit Jake and check on how he was handling Moms. She packed me a care package for him with his favorite cookies. Portland became our regular spot. Rebecca would drive from Denver, I'd fly in from Seattle, and we'd spend 2 days pretending we were different people leading different lives. She'd tell me about her work, her dreams, her divorce that had left her cynical about marriage. I'd tell her about everything except the parts that mattered. How Lily had lost her first tooth, how Sam was learning to ride a bike, how Emma had started taking art classes and was actually getting pretty good. "Do you ever think about leaving her?" Rebecca asked one night as we lay in bed at the Marriott downtown. We just finished having, and she was tracing patterns on my chest with her finger. "Sometimes." I lied. The truth was I never thought about leaving Emma because leaving would require me to acknowledge that what I was doing was real. As long as I could pretend it was just a temporary escape, I could keep both worlds spinning. "I think about it," she continued, "about what it would be like if we're free. If we could do this without all the sneaking around." I the top of her head instead of answering. Rebecca wanted me to choose her, but I'd already chosen. I'd chosen to be the kind of person who could have bought. The kind of person who could kiss his wife goodbye on Friday morning and be in another woman's arms by Friday night. The kind of person who could help his daughter with her homework over FaceTime from a hotel room where the sheets still smelled like betrayal. The months blended together. Rebecca and I developed inside jokes, shared memories, a whole relationship that existed in hotel rooms and text messages. Meanwhile at home, Emma and I were planning Sam's 6th birthday party, dealing with Lily's anxiety about middle school, and talking about maybe refinishing the basement. I got sloppy. Not with the big things, I was still careful about receipts and alibis and making sure my stories lined. But with the little things, I'd forget to respond to Emma's text because I was busy with Rebecca. I'd come home from business trips with a different energy that Emma couldn't quite place. I'd zone out during family dinners, thinking about conversations I'd had with someone else. Having an affair, Emma asked me one night in November, 7 months after Chicago. We were lying in bed, and she'd said it so casually that I almost didn't process the question. When I did, my heart started so hard I was sure she could hear it. "What?" I said, trying to sound shocked instead of terrified. "An affair. Having one. What the? Where is this coming from?" She rolled over to face me, and in the dim light from the hallway, I could see she'd been crying. "We've been different for months. Distant, we're always on phone. Smell different when come home from trips. And last week when Sarah called to invite us to dinner, had no idea who she was. Sarah Michael, my best friend since college, I've known her for 10 years. My mouth went dry. I had been thinking about Rebecca when Emma mentioned Sarah, and I genuinely blanked on who she was talking about. "I'm not having an affair," I said, and the words felt like ash in my mouth. "Then what's going on? 'Cause something is, I can feel it." But this was my chance. My one opportunity to stop this before it destroyed everything. Emma was giving me an opening to confess, to come clean, to save our marriage and our family. All I had to do was tell the truth. "I think I'm just struggling more than I realize with Moms," I said instead. "Maybe I should talk to someone, a therapist or something." Relief flooded her face. "Oh honey, yes. I think that would really help. I've been worried about." She curled against me, and I held her while she fell asleep, hating more than I thought was possible. But not enough to stop. 2 days later I texted Rebecca, "Can meet me in Portland next weekend? I need to see." That weekend was different. Instead of our usual routine of dinner and drinks and pretending we were a normal couple, I was desperate and hungry for her in a way that scared both of us. I needed to lose in someone who didn't know me well enough to see what I was becoming. "What's wrong?" she asked as we lay in bed afterward. "Renat pot," Emma suspects something, I said and immediately regretted it. Rebecca and I had an unspoken rule that we didn't talk about my family in detail. What did tell her? That I'm struggling with grief, that I need therapy. Rebecca was quiet for a long time, then she said, "Maybe should get therapy, maybe should tell her the truth." I can't. Why not? Because telling Emma the truth would mean this fantasy world I'd built would disappear. Because telling Emma the truth would mean facing what I'd become. Because telling Emma the truth would mean choosing between them, and I wasn't ready to choose. Because it would destroy her. I said, which wasn't untrue but wasn't the real reason either. And lying to her won't. I didn't have an answer for that. When I got home from that trip, Emma had made my favorite dinner and rented a movie she thought I'd like. She'd also printed out information about 3 different therapists in our area. "I want to support through this," she said over dinner. "Whatever need." That night, after the kids were in bed, we made love for the first time in months. Really made love, not just the mechanical we'd been having when we both remembered we were supposed to want each other. She whispered that she loved me, that she was proud of me for wanting to get help, that everything was going to be okay. I wanted to tell her the truth so badly it felt like it might me. Instead, I held her close and promised her I'd call a therapist in the morning. I did call a therapist, Dr. Martinez, a kind woman in her 50s who specialized in grief counseling. I made an appointment for the following week and told Emma I was taking the first step toward healing. But I also texted Rebecca and told her I couldn't wait another month to see her. We needed to figure out a way to meet sooner. That's when the lies really started multiplying. Therapy became my excuse for everything. I needed extra sessions. I needed to process difficult emotions alone. I needed space to work through my grief. Emma was so supportive it made me sick. Meanwhile, Rebecca and I were meeting every 2 weeks. Sometimes for a full weekend, sometimes just for a night. We were taking bigger risks, getting more careless. She started talking more seriously about me leaving Emma. I started entertaining the conversations instead of shutting them down. "She doesn't even know," Rebecca said one afternoon as we walked through downtown Portland. "Not really. If she did, she'd know. Not happy, I'm happy," I said automatically. No or not, or going through the motions, or playing a role. But when with me or alive, she wasn't wrong. With Rebecca, I felt like the person I'd been before: mortgages and parent, teacher conferences and the soul crushing weight of being responsible for other people's happiness. With Rebecca I was spontaneous and interesting and desired. With Emma I was just Michael. Reliable, predictable Michael who fixed leaky faucets and helped with math homework and fell asleep watching Netflix on the couch. "Maybe we should stop this," I said, but I didn't mean it. Do want to stop? None don't. It was that simple and that complicated. I didn't want to stop, so I didn't stop. I wanted both lives, so I kept living both lives. I wanted to be the good husband and father, and I wanted to be the passionate lover, and somehow I convinced I could be both forever. The breaking point came right before Christmas. Emma wanted to visit Jake for the holidays since it was his first Christmas without mom. I panicked because Portland was supposed to be my safe space with Rebecca, not somewhere I'd go with my family. "Actually, maybe we should just stay home this year," I suggested. "Let Jake have some space to grieve." Emma looked at me like I'd suggested we cancel Christmas entirely. "Michael, he's brother. He shouldn't be alone for his first Christmas, without mom," I said, already planning how to explain to Rebecca that I couldn't see her for the next month. But I didn't explain it to her. Instead, I told Emma I needed to go to Portland a week early to help Jake prepare for our visit. Just me, not the whole family. I'd scout out activities for the kids and make sure he was emotionally ready for company. Emma thought it was sweet. "We're such a good brother," she said, kissing me goodbye. That week in Portland with Rebecca was the most intense time we'd ever spent together. 7 full days of playing house, of pretending we were a real couple without obligations or secrets. She cooked for me. I helped her pick out Christmas presents for her coworkers. We talked about taking a vacation together, maybe somewhere warm where no one knew us. On the last night, as we lay in bed in the hotel that had become our second home, she said it. "I love, Michael." I should have ended it right then. Those 3 words changed everything because they made it impossible to pretend this was just about or excitement or temporary escape. Rebecca was in love with me, and I was going to keep lying to her just like I was lying to Emma. "I love too," I said, because it was easier than the truth, which was that I loved the version of I got to be with her. The next day I checked out of the hotel and drove to Jake's house to spend Christmas with my family. Emma and the kids arrived that evening. And for 4 days I played the perfect husband and father while texting Rebecca constantly. On Christmas morning as I watched Lily and Sam open their presents, Emma curled next to me on Jake's couch and whispered, "This is perfect, our family all together." I her forehead and agreed, while simultaneously deleting a text from Rebecca that said, "Missing already, can't wait until New Year's Eve." That's when I knew I was truly lost. When I could look at my children on Christmas morning and feel nothing but impatience to get back to my double. When I could hold my wife and think about another woman. When I could lie so easily that the lies felt more real than the truth. I'd become my mother, sitting in that living room with her family while her heart belonged somewhere else. The only difference was that she'd eventually chosen her family over her affair. I wasn't sure I was going to make the same choice. The end came on a Tuesday in February, 11 months after Chicago, in the most mundane way possible. I was supposed to be in therapy, but instead I was at the airport, about to fly to Denver to spend the night with Rebecca. She'd finally gotten tired of hotel rooms and wanted to show me her apartment, her world. Emma called while I was waiting at the gate. "How was therapy today?" she asked, like she did every Tuesday. "Good," I said, watching the gate agent scan boarding passes. "Really productive. I'm proud of her sticking with it." "Dr. Martinez sounds wonderful." Dr. Martinez was wonderful. I'd actually been seeing her for 6 months, using our real sessions to construct believable lies about fictional sessions. She was helping me work through my complicated grief about my mother's affair, though I'd never told her about mine. "Listen, I'm gonna be late tonight." I continued, boarding pass in hand. Dr. Martinez wants to try a new technique that involves longer sessions. That's fine, I'll save some dinner. I said and meant it in some twisted, compartmentalized way. Love too. I hung and boarded the plane, my wedding ring heavy in my pocket. I'd started taking it off for Rebecca visits because seeing it made her sad. Denver was different from our hotel encounters. Rebecca's apartment was warm and lived in, full of books and plants and photos of friends I'd never meet. She made me dinner and we talked about her job, her family, her dreams for the future. For a few hours I could pretend I was someone else entirely. Someone free. We were lying in her bed afterward when her phone rang. She glanced at it and frowned. It's work, I should take this. Rebecca Chen, she answered, then listened for a moment. What? No, that can't be right. I'm not supposed to present until Thursday. I watched her face change as she realized she'd mixed her schedule. She had a major client presentation the next morning, not Thursday. She needed to be on a 6 a.m. flight to Phoenix. She said after. I have to pack. I have to be at the airport in 4 hours. We both knew what this meant. I was supposed to fly home Wednesday evening, but now Rebecca would be gone, and I'd already told Emma I was staying for a 2-day intensive therapy program. I can change my flight, I offered. Come home early. No, don't, stay, use my apartment, pretend live here for a day. The idea was intoxicating. A full day in Rebecca's space without her, surrounded by her things living her. I could work remotely, order takeout, sleep in her bed. It would be like playing house in the most pathetic way possible. After she left for the airport at 4 a.m., I couldn't fall back asleep. I wandered around her apartment, looking at her books, her photos, the coffee mug she'd left in the sink. On her nightstand was a framed picture I hadn't noticed before. The two of us from our weekend in Portland, taken by a stranger outside Powell's Books. We looked happy. We looked like a real couple. I picked the photo and stared at it, trying to remember who that version of was supposed to be. The man in the picture looked relaxed, genuinely happy in a way I hadn't felt at home in months. But he also looked like a stranger. That's when Emma called. Good morning, she said, sounding strangely formal. How are feeling after yesterday's session? Something in her tone made my run cold. I'm good, still processing a lot of stuff. That's interesting, because I called Dr. Martinez's office this morning to schedule a couples session, and they told me something very strange. My heart stopped. What did they tell? They told me haven't had an appointment since December. They told me canceled all January and February appointments. They told me that yesterday, when we're supposedly having breakthrough session, Dr. Martinez was actually in Cabo on vacation. I stood in Rebecca's living room, holding a photo of us together, while my wife's voice came through the phone like a sentence. Emma, I can explain. Ken, because I've been sitting here all night trying to figure out where actually we're yesterday. And all the Tuesdays before that. And I realized something interesting. She paused, and I could hear her breathing. Do remember when I asked if we're having an affair? And said no, but then got all concerned about needing therapy for grief. Emma, please. I started thinking about timing. About how grief seemed to get worse right after found mom's things in the attic. About how I've been different ever since Chicago. About how I've been lying to months about therapy appointments. I can explain everything. I'm sure can. I've become very good at explaining things, very creative with stories. Her voice broke on the last word, and I realized she was crying. We're right now, Michael. I looked around Rebecca's apartment at her books, her plants, her coffee mug, the photo of us in my hands. I could keep lying. I could make another story, another excuse, another reason why I wasn't where I was supposed to be. Instead, I told her the truth. I'm in Denver. Yes, the silence stretched between us for so long I thought she'd hung. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How long? 11 months. Another silence. To love her. The question I'd been avoiding, even in my own head. The question that would determine everything. I don't know. To love me? Yes. Then how could do this to us? I didn't have an answer. Not one that would make sense to anyone who wasn't living inside my fractured reality. How to explain that can love someone and still destroy them? How to explain that can be grateful for and still throw it away? I have to go, Emma said finally. I need to figure out what to tell the kids. Emma. Let me explain. Our home, Michael. Or exactly where it chose to be. She hung. I stood in Rebecca's apartment I don't know how long, holding the phone staring at that picture of us. Then I smashed it against the wall. The frame shattered, glass everywhere, but the photo was intact. Just me and Rebecca smiling like idiots, completely oblivious to what was coming. I booked the next flight home, but it was too late. By the time I landed in Seattle, Emma had already told the kids that Daddy had made some bad choices and wouldn't be living with them anymore. She'd already called a lawyer. She'd already started the process of dismantling that I'd spent 11 months systematically destroying. Lily and Sam were at Emma's sister's house when I got home. Emma was in our bedroom packing my clothes into suitcases. Don't have to do this, I said from the doorway. I do. She didn't look at me. I can't have in this house. I can't have around our children. Not right now. They're my children too. Are they? Because for 11 months I've been acting like I have a completely different family somewhere else. She was right. For 11 months, I'd been living like Lily and Sam were optional. Like Emma was optional, like our entire together was something I could just pause whenever I felt like being someone else. I'm sorry, I said, and the words felt pathetic and inadequate. I know are. But sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo 11 months of lies. Sorry doesn't make me trust again. She zipped the last suitcase and finally looked at me. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, but her voice was steady. I need to leave. Tonight. I'll call tomorrow and we can figure out when can see the kids. Emma, please, I love our family. This thing with Rebecca, it wasn't real. It was just what? Just 11 months of lying to me. Just 11 months of choosing her over us. Just 11 months of looking me in the eye and pretending to be someone or not. I wanted to explain about my mother's letters, about how discovering her affair had somehow poisoned my ability to believe in anything good or permanent. I wanted to tell her about the compartments I'd built in my head, about how I'd convinced I could love both of them without anyone. I wanted to make her understand that I'd never meant for it to go this far. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was that I'd chosen Rebecca over Emma every single day for 11 months, And now Emma was choosing herself. Will tell me one thing, she asked as I picked my suitcases. Was any of it real? Our marriage, our family, the man I thought I married. All of it was real. Then how did throw it away so easily? I didn't have an answer for that either. I moved into a studio apartment across town that night. The same night I texted Rebecca to tell her my marriage was over. She was still in Phoenix dealing with her work crisis. I'm so sorry, she wrote back. Okay. I stared at that text for an hour before responding. Was I okay? I just lost everything that mattered to me. My wife, my kids, my home, my identity as a good person. I was sitting in a furnished apartment that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner, surrounded by suitcases full of the remnants of my old. I don't know, I wrote back. When can I see? That was the question, wasn't it? Now that I was free, now that I'd sacrificed my marriage for this relationship, when could I see her? We could be together now without sneaking around, without lies, without hotel rooms. We could have what we'd been pretending to want. But sitting in that apartment, I realized something horrible. I didn't want to see her. Not because I didn't care about her, but because seeing her would make this real. And if this was real, then I'd thrown away my family for something that existed primarily in hotel rooms and text messages. I need some time, I wrote. How much time? Forever, I thought, because we're never the point. The point was the lying, the secret, the feeling of being someone different. Now that the secret was out, now that there was nothing to hide, what was left? I never answered that text. The divorce took 8 months. Emma was fair but firm. I got every other weekend with the kids and one night during the week. Half of everything we'd built together, legally speaking. In reality, I got much less. Lily, now 9, barely spoke to me during our visits. She'd answer my questions with one-word responses and spend most of our time to the reading or doing homework. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "No, what's wrong, Daddy? Left us." I didn't leave, sweetheart. Mommy and I just couldn't live together anymore. Because had a girlfriend when we're supposed to only have mommy. There was no point in trying to explain relationships to a 9-year-old. Especially when I couldn't explain them to her. Sam at 6 was more forgiving but also more confused. He kept asking when I was coming home, when we were going to be a family again. Why mommy cried sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking. Did stop loving us? He asked one day as we were building Legos in my apartment. No, buddy. I never stopped loving. I never will. Then why did leave? How do tell a 6-year-old that left because we're selfish and weak? That left because got addicted to being someone else? That left because found some old letters in an attic and decided that meant faithfulness was impossible? Sometimes adults make bad choices, I said. And sometimes those choices, the people we love most, will make better choices now. I'm trying to. But I wasn't sure that was true. I wasn't sure I remembered how to make good choices anymore. Emma started dating someone 8 months after our divorce was finalized. A teacher at Lily's school named David who coached Sam's soccer team and knew how to braid hair and made pancakes that looked like Mickey Mouse. The kids loved him. Emma seemed genuinely happy for the first time since I'd known her. I should have been glad that she'd found someone who could give her what I couldn't. Instead, I felt jealous and replaced and sorry for, which made me realize I hadn't learned anything from losing everything. Rebecca texted me occasionally for the first few months, then less frequently, then not at